You know we had to get some ridiculous predictions or speculation out there, didn't we? In this video, we're going over the Seattle Kraken and 5 players that I think have a very realistic and somewhat high chance of being taken by the Seattle Kraken a year from now in the expansion draft. Now, to start off this video, I'm saying this is not a full lineup prediction. If you want that, you can go check out Graf's video. He did that a few months ago back in February before the Seattle Kraken name was even announced, but that's a video that could go over what a full lineup would look like. This video here is just going over 5 players who I think have the spotlight in this kind of scenario. And what we're going off of is the few rules that are laid out on capfriendly.com as to how the expansion draft will actually work. Each NHL team, except for the Golden Knights, will need to protect either 7 forwards, 3 D, and 1 goalie, or 8 forwards or D and 1 goalie. Everybody else who doesn't have a no movement clause, or who waives their no movement clause, who is also under contract in 2021-2022 and abides by the 40-70 rule if they're a skater, will then be exposed for the Seattle Kraken to be taken in the expansion draft. You're taking a look at it right here. Players need to have a contract going to at least 2022 and played 40 or more games in the NHL last season, or 70 total games in the past 2 seasons. So that eliminates guys like rookies, it eliminates RFAs who are under contract and expiring soon. So there's a very specific set of criteria, and obviously this list could change, and players who are available could change down the line. But currently, as of today, and the way the cap and the contracts are shaped up in the current NHL market and climate, these 5 players are the ones who I think have a very realistic chance of being available, and the ones who could provide a very good amount of value to a brand new NHL team. So without further ado, the first player I have going to the Kraken is TJ Oshie out of the Washington Capitals. Now, the Capitals are a team that are going to need to protect a few guys. Ovechkin, yeah, he's getting protected. Backstrom, yeah, he's probably getting protected. Tom Wilson, yeah, he's probably getting protected. But when it comes to the Washington Capitals, what they're known for is their offensive scoring. And TJ Oshie is a guy who has led the charge in that category some nights for this team. And as a guy whose contract expires in 2025, when he's 38 years old, which does sound quite unattractive, I'm going to be honest, I could definitely see Oshie as the guy that the Washington Capitals would want the Seattle Kraken to take. This is the kind of guy who I could see the Capitals saying, okay, we'll give you a second if you take this guy. We'll give you a third and a prospect if you take Oshie off of our hands. Because we saw the Vegas Golden Knights a few years ago pull off all these trades where they acquire picks and prospects for getting pretty legitimate NHL talent. So the fact is, I could see a lot of that carrying over into this new expansion draft, and TJ Oshie, to me, even though he does have somewhat of an undesirable situation with his contract and his age, he's still an offensive machine who could get 50, maybe 55, 60 points in a year, and he's pretty much guaranteed to hit 20 goals a year too. If you're Seattle, you're new, and your team is not supposed to be great, what do you want the most out of your team? You want to score goals, and a guy like TJ Oshie does just that. Furthermore, on the contract side of things, let's go over to our second player, and the guy I have here is Tyler Johnson from the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is not a surprise. Tyler Johnson is from Washington. He has been teased of going to Seattle for a very long time, especially with the context of his contract that he has and the cap situation of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Johnson is owed $5 million a year until 2024, when he will be 33 years old. And as a guy who is from the local area and who also is very capable of putting up points, he is certainly a guy that I could definitely see the Seattle Kraken having their eye on. And now, because the flat cap is here, the Tampa Bay Lightning are in a position where they need to be a little bit more careful with their money. They may have low taxes, but they have a lot of forwards tied up in over $4 million. And with the way the players are going to need to be exposed, and the fact that they don't have too many contracts signed until the end of the 2020-2021 season, it does put a little bit of a light on the guys who they do have, and Tyler Johnson is included in that boat. So he's a guy who, in my opinion, will be a suitor for being a Seattle Kraken once their first game comes and goes. Next up on our list, it's the Edmonton Oilers' James Neal. Now this one is kind of weird. I will say that. I was debating whether or not to put Jesse Puljujarvi in this spot too, because the fact that Puljujarvi is in this gray area where we don't know if he's actually going to come back to Edmonton, that kind of throws a huge wrench in the entire plan here. Assuming Puljujarvi gets re-signed and they decide to keep him, that changes up the entire idea. So for now, we're just going with James Neal, because James Neal, in my mind, is under a similar situation as to what the Edmonton Oilers would actually be okay with giving up in a situation like this. He's got a contract going until 2023 at $5.75 million. He will be 35 when that contract expires. And he just most recently put up 19 goals for the Edmonton Oilers on a team where he wasn't really supposed to be as good as he was. Regardless, though, we still got information that the James Neal who is capable of getting 20 goals still does exist. And when you're an expansion team, you're probably going to be filled with a few young guys here and there, a few depth pieces, so why not go for at least some players who could be guaranteed to actually still have a scoring touch? Which is why we've gone through with the guys that we've gone through already, but the next one on this list that I have is the Toronto Maple Leafs' Andreas Johnson, and he is not on this list for the same reasons as the other three. No, Andreas Johnson is not an old, aging veteran who, by the time the contract he is on expires, will be potentially in an undesirable spot in his hockey playing career. No, Andreas Johnson is not that. In fact, he's quite young. The thing is, the Toronto Maple Leafs are a team that, let's face it, we know their cap situation. It's kind of bad. And assuming they don't end up trading Andreas Johnson beforehand, they may have no choice but to expose a player like this in the expansion draft. Because with all the other guys they're going to need to protect, it opens the window for guys like Pierre Engvall, Justin Hall, and potentially Andreas Johnson to be exposed. And when it comes to the guys the Leafs could expose, I take a look at Andreas Johnson and I say, yes, this is probably the best guy here. Now, of course, there's a lot of debate as to what's going to go on because Hyman's a UFA at the end of 2021, Ilya Mikheyev is not going to be eligible, nor will Robertson, I believe. There's a lot of internal debate amongst Leafs fans as to what's going to happen, but to me, Andreas Johnson is the guy, and he's a guy who, if you have the opportunity to take as Seattle, you take it. And on to the last pick we have over here, the fifth guy I have who could become a Seattle Kraken. His name is Mark Giordano, and everybody in Flames Nation kind of got pissed off when I said that. But, hear me out. Let's go over on Reddit and check out our Calgary Flames and see what they have to say about the Kraken and the speculation as to who they're going to take. The top comment here is from a user named GreaterLD, and he writes a comment that I think is very, very interesting here. He says the strategy should be to leave Giordano exposed in favor of protecting another D-man and make the Kraken choose between Giordano and Shillington. That way, they can protect their forward core. Gaudreau, Monahan, Lindholm, Tkachuk, Backlund, Mangiapane, and Dubé. Not to mention the other guys on the blue line too. Furthermore, we have this article over here from Eric Francis talking about why, if Juuso Välimäki suits up for the Flames this summer, it could be really bad for Mark Giordano. Because if Välimäki plays, it would ultimately give him the correct amount of games played to need to be eligible to be protected. The fact is, Hanifin and Anderson are locks on the back end given their age, skill, and long-term deals. Välimäki would be a cinch too, but by missing an entire season this year, he wouldn't have had enough NHL experience to be eligible to be taken. Thus, he wouldn't have to be protected, and the Flames could theoretically protect Giordano instead. So if Juuso Välimäki plays in the play-in series, it could lead to the ultimate demise of Mark Giordano's time in Calgary. And if you're a Seattle Kraken team who is brand new, and you have a shot at taking a 70-point Norris-winning defenseman who seems to be getting better year after year, who is on until, 2022? With a $6.5 million contract? You'll literally have this guy for a season. If you're worried about the cap, you'll only have him for a year. But the leadership that a guy like Mark Giordano can provide, especially to a team of ragtag NHLers that are thrown together randomly, that had no idea they were going to be teammates a day prior to me, is extremely valuable. And the fact is, there is a possibility, there is a timeline that exists where he is indeed available. So, those are my picks for the Seattle Kraken thus far. It's TJ Oshie of the Capitals, Tyler Johnson of the Lightning, James Neal of the Oilers, Andreas Johnson of the Leafs, and Mark Giordano of the Flames. Talk to me in the comments below as to why my picks are whack. Sure, this is only 5, and the likelihood that I get all 5 correct is low, which is kind of why I only wanted to stick to 5 and not make an entire roster video like Grav did. That would also take a very long time on my behalf too, but if you have any corrections to what I'm saying, if you have any other options from these 5 teams that I've mentioned that Seattle could probably take instead, or that you think would see a better fit for both sides, then tell me all about it in the comments below. It's why we have a comment section in general. Also, I'll leave a link in the description to both Cap Friendly's rules that lay out just how the expansion draft is supposed to work, as well as Cap Friendly's own expansion draft tool that they have available, so you can get a look at the rosters and see for yourself, kind of get an idea of who should be on the market, who's available to be protected, and, you know, you can build your own speculation off of that. It's a very useful tool, and it definitely did help out in the making of this video over here. So all those goodies are going to be down there in the comment section below, as well as Grav's video too. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below what you think about the expansion draft and my picks. And bye.